Well, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Let the Truth Be Told. My name is Sean Williams, and I thank the Lord for Jason and allowing us in Urbana City Council chambers once again to tape another program of Let the Truth Be Told. I sit in front of you tonight with a special guest, Brother Laurice. We've been dialoguing back and forth all day, so we kind of been warming up for the program that we're going to be airing on tonight. And I thank the Lord for everybody that stopped me in the streets and say, Sean, I watch your program every Sunday night. I thank you for tuning in to us. Today we're going to come with a few topics, and we're going to give you our views and our opinions on some important issues that's going on throughout our community. We've had a disturbing amount of gun violence going on throughout this community. On last week we had a bunch of gun violence and shots fired. Unfortunately, a few young people were injured through some of this gun violence. I think the News Gazette's called it the shootings, shooting 92, 93, 94, and 95. We're going to talk about some different issues on and some things that the city of Champaign is going to implement, and some programs they're going to implement, and some studies that they have done to try to help curb the violence that's been going on throughout our community. But before we get started, I want to introduce my guest. Let him speak a little bit, tell the viewing audience a little bit about himself and a little bit about his background, and then we're going to get into this dialogue.
How you doing, Sean?
Hey, you might want to
What's
put some bass in it.
I would say a little something. Forgive me because I talk kind of low. Of course, my name is Laurice. I'm just, local resident of District 1, born and raised. Um, you know, businessman, ex-knucklehead. So, just here talking with my brother Sean about some things that's happening in our community. So.
You know, one of the reasons I've been after this brother to try to get him on this program, because we dialogue a lot. I've been knowing him for many umpteen years. I've seen the transition in his life. I see the things that he's been doing throughout this community with young people through martial arts. I mean, and he's been able to add a certain level of a discipline within young people throughout the community, and everybody that comes into his programs, they respect him as a person, as a man, and his craft. I respect him as a man, his craft. I told him, just show me one move. I just want to learn one move. I don't need to know multiple moves. Let me practice on one move. And but as you see the direction of the community, and where do you see the direction of the community is going at the climate that's out there on the ground level? Where do you see the direction of the community going as a whole when it comes down to young people and the violence that's going on within the community?
I think the real direction is we keep visiting a small problem that gets bigger. Seems like throughout the years, our youth and our, if you want to say, not senior in the sense of our grandmothers, but our elders, those like ourselves, a gap is growing as far as just we're trying to keep food on the table, pay the regular bills, and it seems that our youth are becoming more dissatisfied with just going to school and handling the common things that youth are supposed to handle. Years ago, we would often deal with our programming, disparity in some programming or the lack thereof, as well as people willing. Sometimes some people say the financing of it. And so the direction, especially, dealing with what happened, is still, whether it's 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, it seems like we're still stuck at square one because we're not getting to the solutions, to the actual problem. So the direction, I really don't know. When I think about it, I really don't know the direction as a whole, because we're not very unified when it comes to what direction we really want to go to. Our youth is no different than it was a few years ago, although they're facing some things with social media and like you say, for some reason the gun violence is very much up, and we're dealing with the problems that we're dealing with when you get a certain age and dealing with the everyday life, so to speak. So I would have to say my answer to that would be the direction we're really at a standstill, because we're with our dialogue we're trying to figure out what direction do we go to curb these things.
And in being in a city's position or a leader's position, time is of the essence. So we're working on we're working on a fast moving time clock so that we stop the next violent shooting.
Right.
And so that being said, the city's moving toward a direction where they're going to be doing some things, implementing some things, and they're asking for community's help. But I wanted to go over an article that's talking about curbing gun violence that was in the News Gazette, and it was out of Sunday's paper, and it talked about this past week, this past Sunday's paper, and it says since February there's been 91 separate shootings in Champaign, Urbana, and Ferengian areas around the city. Urbana Police Chief Pat Conley reports with a tone of frustration. Some resulted in deaths or injuries, only merely involved in bullets fired in the air. Whatever the case, everyone agrees that it's worsening the quality of life, that's in the community.
Yeah.
That being said, they're requesting, even within this program, in this article, they're requesting the help from other local agencies, other judicial agencies, whether if it's law enforcement, they're asking for organizations. They're coming up with a program, and the program that they're trying to develop is called Don't Shoot Program. It's a Don't Shoot program, and it's based from a Peoria law enforcement, and they implemented this program, and it helped curb gun violence. What the program is designed to do is to bring potential offenders to the forefront, to identify these potential offenders that have been violent throughout these communities. I guess our law enforcement has identified these guys as being role players into current gun shootings that's occurring in these communities.
Right.
So they're going to partner them with social agencies throughout the community. They're going to partner them with state's attorney's office, partner with local law enforcement, along with city leaders. And also, what's the unique dynamic of this program is to attach them with victims from the families that have suffered the loss of a loved one through these violent shootings. And so this is something that's going to be different from my take on reading some of the articles. This has worked in about 70 other communities, and it's had a positive result. I read an article from Chief Cobb earlier that said that under even Pat Conley said his frustration, Chief Cobb's take on it it's the same broken song. It's the same old thing. We go to these shots fired. We go to these cases where people have been actually shot or murdered, and nobody wants to say anything.
Yeah.
And so it leaves them to a place where we just watched one case for Jamil Hendricks, where two people that were two people were identified for those particular cases were exonerated from the cases because they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute. So we're at what you said, standstill. And we're scratching our heads, trying to figure out how do we stop this violence? How do we come up to a place and a level where we can, Tracy Parsons said, either stop this violence or being able to slow it down in some type of way.
Yeah.
So that being said, we talked about many things inside the shop on today on how did we get here?
Yeah.
How did we get here?
I think twofold. One, it's happening at such a fast rate that sometimes you used to could get in a conversation. Oh, you're talking about the shooting, and nowadays, once you blink, it's like they were shooting last night too, or they just shot, or somebody just got shot. If you're not Facebook savvy or just always in the news. It happens so quick nowadays. But I think two things. I think that we're still facing attitudes. And the attitudes that we're facing, the reason why we can't get down to the heart of it is right now we have this us against them mentality with
When
law,
you say us against them,
law
who?
enforcement.
Okay.
You know, we have our history, you know, as a people with law enforcement. And what's happening is, here it is, you know, our brother, Chief Cobb, has come, you know, he's come in, and like the article is like, wow, since our brother come in, now all of these things are happening. And we don't want him to appear like, you know, it's his fault. But that's something that could go on his record that we don't want on his record, because it's like these incidents, they're not happening just because of one or another thing. They're happening because individuals are living a lifestyle that they chose to live, and they're making awful decisions with these weapons, whether they've gotten them legally or illegally. And many of our, I will say, our babies, you know, not ours personally, you know, but are getting in the way, you know, have gotten in the way and have lost their lives. And then with that attitude, here it is, many people, whether that's on the scene, whether that's in the know, they don't want to take the position of finger pointing. So it's really the two attitudes of still us against them, and I don't want to be no snitch, or, you know, I'm not snitching, which being at one time in my life a career criminal, you know, I always thought snitching was when you did a crime with somebody and then you tell so you don't get caught.
Yeah.
Not saying, hey, you know, you messing up my community. That could have been my personal baby. That could have been me. You know, these type of people, we're not going to continue to allow you to do this. You know, I don't know the questions that have to be that are asked. I don't know what kind of liaison is in place, you know, now. But of course, we know there are ways for us to get to the heart of situations. And if we can do that, if we can find, okay, so Lil Ray Ray did that. But yet we don't have the power to arrest, we don't have the power to convict. So I think the attitudes, sometimes maybe our local law enforcement has shown and proved they're going to do their job. And then at a court level, maybe somebody just have to go to the wall and back with it. They're going to have to say, hey, I don't got much, but I'm going to go for this conviction. I'm going to go after this person, and be brave enough to, if not, at least get our palate wet with the, you know, get right down to it with the person that has something to do with it, because we've lost brothers that we strongly feel that should not have lost their lives.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
You know,
definitely.
And whether there were culprits on the inside, on the outside, you know, we don't want to turn our lives over in a vigilante attempt, and then, you know,
And then
we lose our lives.
And you end up in the judicial system.
That's right.
And you know, for me doing some of these funerals, you know, Laurice, it's tough. Even just being a participant in that community thing, and then knowing these people all of my life, and then have to memorialize and be around grieving family members.
I can only imagine.
And so I was participated into a vigil celebration on about a week or so ago with two families that blended together. And the families were kind of connected in relations, and they're family members. And so they lost two family members to the gun violence that happened this year. And I can still hear the uncle saying, man, nephew, you know, you shouldn't even be here. And then the anger and the frustration of it was that, you know, some of you people that's out here, that's walking with us, that's holding our hands, you know who did this. and you ain't said nothing.
Right.
So that's the frustration that Chief is saying. You know, we want to be able to build a strong case on these guys, get these guys off the streets. You know, stop doing these heinous crimes to people throughout our community and taking away our loved ones.
Yeah.
And so, when this fourth shooting happened on Sunday night, and it was, I think, up to 40 people in a parking lot, and they can't get answers from anybody. Nobody knows anything.
Right.
And we're kind of playing this like we're Compton, California, or we're, Detroit, Michigan, or something like that, where we're so fearful to say anything. But I think what we have not got past is what you said early, is the bad relations with the law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
I think that still holds true to even having Chief Cobb on the force.
Yeah.
We're still trying to develop, and we're trying to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
When we still need to work on this relationship piece, where we feel comfortable that we're not going to become a victim and a victim ourselves if we come forth with some information, and not really just a victim from the person that have committed this crime, but starting to get looked through with a microscope from law enforcement to find out what's your name. And it's almost about, when you call and you say, hey, look, I see so-and-so, and then when they come up to you and they say, what's your name, what's your date of birth?
Yeah.
You're not here for that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
It's like you said with Chief Cobb. Chief Cobb is a very reasonable, sincere individual in his profession, but that doesn't mean Officer Smith. I can speak to Officer Smith. That doesn't mean I have a everyday relationship with any with any officer. I know, being a native of Champaign-Urbana, if I didn't grow up with them, or I think we talked about the school, the officers in the schools who do have the ability to tone down a little bit the normal level of aggression and speak to you in a mutual respect outside of an investigate, like you feel like you're being investigated. But like you said, to speak to the 40 in the parking lot, the idea of the shocking idea of, here it is, somebody, they were just out there shooting. And whether we like to admit it or not, many times when you're at, for lack of better words, ground zero, when you're at ground zero at the Whip Barbershop, North End District 1, you're able to see what is real and what's not just on a piece of paper. You know very well that you could be, in a blink of an eye, one of those people in these articles that we're reading, because these same, if you want to say, culprits, suspects, individuals, they're around us every day. I believe we were looking at we was just looking at an article, and you mentioned, man, he was just in the shop. Many times, that happens. It's like, man, I was just talking to him in a barbershop. And now he's incarcerated for something that is out of the ordinary, And I think that the community has to feel a sense of responsibility that, listen, this is my community. The police is there to serve and protect, not patrol and control. And when you think of those two words, serve, excuse me, how you doing? How can I help you? Protect is something happened. These guys are over here shooting. I don't want them to shoot me. That's a sense of protection. But having an attitude, going back to attitudes, there's a sense of attitude of, this person is attempting, he's definitely patrolling, and he's kind of controlling my environment. He's not serving and protected. So, and when you deal with the youth today, our youth, you deal with our youth today, whether that's being inebriated, whether that's being in a drug-induced state, out every day, all day, never mind the weekends, you know. That would be very difficult for them to have any type of rational, intellectual thinking, because many times their friends are being shot and killed, and they don't have the mind.
You know, Larissa, and when you mentioned that, it just brings back compound problems. When you said inebriated, and you said, you know, whether if it's drugs, alcohol, whatever the case might be, you know, I look at the pharmaceutical companies, how they came in and they deemed all these kids to have some type of disability, some type of mental problem. They feed them with a pill at a young age, and then they give a check along with the pill, and then that makes all 3 or 4 more of these kids, because you're getting a check in the household added to the income. Now all these kids grow up on a pill, and so now it's nothing for them to pop a Molly.
Right, right.
Now they got a Molly and they got a gun,
Yeah.
and some alcohol with some weed. You know, so it's a lot of compound issues that the youth have to deal with, and with the brokenness of a household.
Yeah.
You know, no dad being in sight,
And a
or no
cheering
leader.
section.
Yeah, and then you got cheering sections from a lot of different angles.
That's right.
You know, social media, you know, the music that you listen to, a whole bunch of other things. But tailgating off of what you talked about with law enforcement, we're coming off of another report and another article that was in the paper about the Traffic Stop Task Force of Urbana that came up with a study, and a 16-month study, 62-page document that talked about the racial disparities, racial disparities, poor vehicle, and one of the things that they mentioned during this study, and they identified it to 3 major things.
Yeah.
3 major things that they identified it to, and that was that they do this racial profiling off of. It's poor vehicle maintenance, more patrol in a high crimed area.
Yeah.
And then they broke it down for the third one as just being racial profiling. So when I looked at the other 2, it all fit in the category of racial profiling and just the stuff that goes on in an African American or minority neighborhood.
It kind of trumped the first two. You know, ironically, there are some officers that whether growing up with or training with, I remember a few years ago, a training partner, he said, I made a stop. It was a high crime area. And we're not naive to high crime, or maybe sometimes where it might be. And he says, so I'm waiting, and I guess it was a local drug house. So somebody went in, bought some drugs, left out, and got in their vehicle, headed down the street. Boom, pulls them over. He says, I couldn't help but notice you got something hanging on your mirror. And I said, damn, y'all still using that?
Because that's an old,
an
old tactic.
And he looked at me. He said, you know, and most, you know, they call me D. So he said, well, come on, D. It was a damn high crime area. You know, they was coming from the drug spot. And I was almost like, okay, I'll give you that. When in reality is those first 2 points of low maintenance and high crime area. So we're back again, I just said, patrolling and controlling instead of serving and protecting, and well as information, us knowing that, hey, these guys are here for us. They are not here as an armed force, as an occupational army. So that whole process of saying that, hey, it's just racism. In 2015, and we talked about this with another buddy of ours, in 2015, it is too easy to imply racial this, racial that. I believe at our age, if you don't understand it by now, then you may not understand it. So I got a chance to see it in the news, you know, and it said bad news about the traffic situation. You know, the study is in, and we have bad news. And for the racial profiling to be number 3, and specifically for Urbana, I thought, Is that to say that Urbana is more racist than any other, if you want to say local place, here locally? But it's easy to see. It's easy to see because many of us, you don't see our faces in law enforcement in this area. And whatever upbringing many of these officers have, that's something that we've subjected ourselves to because we're not implementing programs and graduating students so that they can replace those racist attitudes and thoughts so that we don't have to worry about that anymore. But now that it's in on paper, maybe that's something that we do need to do.
We need to identify.
And the biggest part, I believe when an officer goes through something, it's the state, Illinois State
Police Department.
Police that kind of come in and investigate. And when I hear problems with police officers, because my oldest brother, he's a police officer in the Chicago area. I love him to death. I can't just say, the hell with all police, and all police are a certain way, because they're not. They're all individuals. So maybe it's something that we have to think about of establishing our own investigative committee when these happen, because it's very hard to come to me and we're in a local bar and you hit me, slap me, do something to me, and then Sunday I'm on your lawn picketing. Sean hit me. Sean is wrong. So it's very hard to say, your wife gonna come out and give me justice. I don't think that's going to be the problem. Maybe we need to come up with our own investigative committee.
And maybe we need to look toward a community independent task force that can work alongside of officers until they get to that point, and be able to help maybe with some type of questioning or translation.
Yeah.
And what that brought me to is I remember when somebody was killed or something out in the Garden Hills neighborhood, and the local pastor called me. He was working with the family, but they weren't getting the answers fast enough, and he said, Sean, look, could you make a call down to the police department, find out what's going on with the process, blah, 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 blah. I talked to Renee. Renee set it up with some detectives. We went down as community and law enforcement to find out what's going on with the murder of this young man over in the Garden Hills neighborhood. So when we got down there, first of all, for officers knocking on doors and then they see Sean, they wonder what in the world is going on, and so you can see people looking at the door and looking out cracks of windows and they running back and forth, and then I'm just saying, hey, look, we're guy who's been missing in the neighborhood. We're trying to find out where he's at. You guys heard anything, seen anything? Right. And they was real receptive toward me, but as soon as they seen that gun, that badge, they kind of shut down. But then it was one particular guy that we kind of thought would maybe been a suspect that might have knew a little bit more information, and I was doing a one-on-one with him. I mean, I'm one-on-one. Look, brother, man, this family, man, they want to know just where their loved one at, man. Tell us where the loved one at, man. We need to really know what happened to their loved one, man. And he kind of was breaking down, and he got teary-eyed because I think he knew a little bit more than what he really, really wanted to say, but he wanted to tell it to me. Right. Because he felt bad, I don't know what it was, but then here come the cameras. Yeah. Here come the other officers. Yeah. And he shut me down. And I think we could have got a little bit further with that guy. Yeah. And and so it's all about relationships is really what I want to break it down to. It's about relationships. You having a personal relationship, and as an officer in a neighborhood, I got to develop a relationship in that neighborhood. Yeah. I got to develop a relationship with not just young people, but seniors in the neighborhood. Yeah. And these people, they'll tell you what you want to know if they know you and they trust you. Yeah. And so, and during this here findings that we found out about these disparities, the things that the recommendation was at the end of it, we'll talk about the recommendation. The findings was blacks and Hispanics paying higher fines and get charged with multiple violations when they're stopped. One of the reasons we had mentioned was the reason for it being hot spots. And the effects of it was they were targeting low-income families, low-income
Yeah.
neighborhoods. The recommendation before you get started is the recommendation was to not ticket for marijuana usage. And another recommendation from this task force was to give more proportionate, more proportionate violations to other groups other than African Americans or Hispanics, so divide this thing more evenly
Yeah.
across the board. But if race, what I think about, if you're racial profiling, how are you mentally
Yeah.
going to
Well,
be able to divide this thing across the
that
board
might
evenly?
be a whole nother program.
That might be a whole nother
That might be a
program.
whole nother program. Because when you deal with racial profiling, you're dealing with a systematic, not just thinking, but a protocol.
Mindset, yeah.
So you're dealing with a protocol based on, of course, I don't want to ticket my people that are law-abiding citizens, tax-paying citizens, people that are, if you want to say, benefiting. So I'm going to go to the poor. I'm going to go to and get, and although they're poor, I put a mandatory, I mandate something on them, and I'm going to get this money out of them that I usually wouldn't have gotten out of them. And so that, I mean, that comes within, you know, the system. And I also have to understand, I commend, I believe it was a European American brother who did the survey. I commend him for doing the survey and his findings. But I still have to ask, okay, now what?
Right.
Now what?
You told us what we already thought anyway.
Yeah, we figured this. We know we live in a high crime area. I mean, speaking once again, ground zero. I mean, because if you ever got your car detailed, if you ever got your car detailed, you ever got it repainted or something, you know red is the most expensive color. And I still got bullet. I live on 4th and Bradley, on 4th and 6th and Beardsley, and I still got a bullet hole in one of my vehicles that, because it's red, they said you might as well get the whole vehicle painted, that you're trying to do this one spot. So, you know, it's very difficult to speak to when you're in it. When you're in it and you're seeing it, and then somebody says, this is the, no, it's not really that. It's not, because on a good summer night, you can almost see, as we say, you know, the cherries spinning in every direction.
Wow.
In every direction.
Wow.
You know.
Wow. And it's hard for some people in other areas to wrap their mind around
'Cause it don't
this
happen
way
in
of
those
life.
areas.
This way of life.
Yeah.
It becomes a way of life for us.
Yeah.
And so, to be able to get around and get out of this way of life, you know, and one of the things I thought about, you know, because we already know what the findings were, and we grew up off that, you know,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
when we tried to get over to see some buddies in Lakeside, and I had just got my driver's license, and I got my old beat 'em up, pick 'em up car, you know, and
You-
got
you
my
dare not
my
go
dump
over
buster,
there.
you know, and so
Yeah.
what I used to do is that as a race of people, a culture of people, we try to stay under the radar.
Yeah.
So we knew that officers
Tiptoe.
hung out on University. So you don't take the main drag. We said, don't take the main drag. So what we took was Graveyard Hill.
Yeah.
We would go through the darkness of Graveyard Hill and come around and tip through the back of Lakeside to go visit a buddy.
Yeah.
That wasn't we was up to nothing. You just didn't want to run through the
Yeah.
problems. You just didn't want to do the song and dance, the 5 heartbeats, I got love for you, baby. You didn't want to go through that
Yeah.
type of song and dance and have to stand up and get humiliated
Yeah.
by somebody that didn't respect you as a person.
Right.
And growing up and so we found out ways to get around it. I'm not one to continue to blame the police in my neighborhood,
Right.
the circumstances that's going on in my neighborhood, that I'm in a low-income neighborhood, the fact that if I don't, you know, we're coming off of 12 to 15 years where we haven't had a active urban league or a active NAACP of educational, like-minded people that were supposed to stand in the gap and be able to address these issues, these findings,
Yeah.
and these were organizations that's supposed to be right in there for our best interests.
Yeah.
And so we're coming off of years of that being absent.
Yeah.
That's leading into some of these issues that Chief Cobb and Chief Conley got to deal with,
And
and our community got to
I
deal with, and these
actually,
victims'
you know what
families.
you said. I didn't think of it that way, and that you say that, it comes to that. It comes to say, this is the reason why, because I came up in the JTPAs, I came up in your program in dealing with small business, coming up in those
Community
programs,
collaboration for
and
economic
now
development.
they're not there. It's no wonder that I'm seeing more young men on the corner
Idle mind is
actually
the
not
devil's
doing
workshop.
anything.
Idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Actually not doing anything. It's like, are you here? You that they're not even breaking a crime.
So when we mention the word, and I listen to Sister State Rep Carol Ammons teach me this, when she said disparities, she said disparities is a breakdown word of desperate people.
That's right. That's right.
And so when you're dealing with hopeless, desperate people,
yeah.
you find out that hurt people hurt other people.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lack of resources, a lack of really those resources broke down to somebody that cared about your situation.
Yeah.
That showed you some love, that looked like you, come from a background of where they can relate to you in whatever you got to deal with, whether if it's a single family home, whether if it's a dad that's working so many hours that he can't spend time to go to your football game, and you had a big brother or a big sister program that came in there and created a vision in you where you could say you can be anything.
Yeah.
We talked about it earlier, where reading books was a way.
Yeah.
Where you were being able to train yourself.
That's right.
Teach yourself the history, to look at people that were in our history, to say, hey, look, if he made a clock, is what your reference was early, he made a clock, then I could do something too.
Yeah.
But when I went over to Centennial School and I talked to a young man and I said, man, what do you think you're going to be and where do you think you're going to be in 5 years? He said, Sean, I really don't even know.
Right.
He said, I used to have some dreams, but most of them probably pretty much shattered right now.
Yeah.
He said, but I don't see nobody around me doing anything.
When you think about two things, me and my assistant instructor, we do advocate work at Centennial with Brother Sheldon. And we were over there, and when I was in my trouble, when I got into my trouble years ago, all I could think about was nobody should have to go through this. It's like this is so terrible. No matter how strong you try to be, I know for me it was terrible. And so I went to the young brothers. So I'm always coming up with ways to see how to make them think for themselves, because we can't think for them. So I asked them. I said, "What do we do if I need a nice coat? Where do I go?" And they said, whether it was Macy's or Burlington Coat Factory. And I asked them, what about some nice shoes? And they went from Activewear to Foot Locker. And finally I said, where do you go to get integrity? Where do you go to get self-respect? They didn't have an answer for me, and not having an answer for me made me think about all the people that, bless his heart, he was one of the, I don't know what they were called, but they were job sites that you did for the JTPA program. And I was blessed to have to work with my family member, my uncle, Howard Mosley. He was a painter. And he was a journeyman, he was in the union. And I worked with him. He taught me painting. And before that, he would talk to me about hard work, and he would talk to me about how to save your money and don't spend your money here. That mentoring. I wasn't a very good basketball player at all as a kid, but it was Jackie Vonner who he looked me in my face and he said, Derek, you might not be able to go Division I.
Kept it real.
But he said, if you keep working hard,
yeah,
a JUCO, you might, You might be able, and that's offensive to a basketball
Yeah,
player. You know,
yeah.
everybody want to be
So-
Division One, but that made me thrive harder. It made me work harder for somebody telling me those things, even though I had a beautiful father, I had a beautiful grandfather, and they believed in me and they supported the wild things that I came up with that I wanted to do at that time. Many of us don't have those things because, like you said, he said, man, my dreams is pretty much shattered. I don't know what I want to do, and I'm thankful for some tough love because you said Centennial. It made me think about Miss Storch, and you know, and that accent. She would say, you know, Derek, what are you gonna do? And I would say, I mean, whatever happens, happens. And that was my attitude as a youth. And she said, well, shit happens. You know, she always mentioned she was from the streets of New York. And I don't know, maybe that's how I started frequenting New York, right? It had something to do with Miss Storch. But though I listened, I could hear those things. And we are lacking not just the people, but in position. You said Urban League, JTPA, NAACP. Those type of people and places have genuine care and concern, not just for a particular color, not just for a particular people, but that's just what they do.
And you know, and unlike a program that we just had that was on the books that we just had going on, and it was money driven for you to be able to, if you want to be a mentor in the program, they paid you to be a mentor and all this other type of stuff. I really ain't for a lot of them programs. And even when I sit through the training, I never did follow up because I wasn't comfortable with the program, because most of the people that are successful with programs do it because they love doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to have a love in the past. It ain't money driven.
Yeah.
It's because you love people, you love young people, and you want to spend some time with them. You want to make them better, and you want to make them better people. And it ain't a race thing. When you talk to Miss Storch, she's an older white lady that just shows some love and some compassion to young African American man that she seen growing up, that you felt some trust in her to be able to speak with her.
She had a genuine love for youth.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, that's what makes the difference. I spoke to my situation. I have been designing and writing programs all the way up until today. It's been a year and a half since I've implemented my own program. But I have been writing and tweaking and figuring out really at the grassroots level because of that money. How you gonna go to a people? You know, if black people have dollars, we need more cents is what we need. So if you keep on pushing that money game, and there's no need for us to be afraid of money, but if you keep pushing that money game to people that don't have money, then what is your point? You know, your point is going to be futile due to the facts of re-education, you know, a re-establishment of what needs to be done, because I don't need you to keep handing me fish. I need the fishing pole.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's
So
right. That's right.
You know,
Got us chasing the tails. You know, one of the things, you know, with coming off of so many violent shootings and trying to get some of these answers and get some of the answers to our young African American men, and also our young African American women too. You know, we talked about me, you know, from a military background, you know, how the military, you know, got us off that cattle bus, you know, from the minute they put us into a foreign territory, some unknown land, they start tearing us down.
Yeah.
And then once they tore us down to a certain point, they wanted to start slowly building your confidence back up to make you feel strong about yourself, feel confident about yourself, proud of your uniform, proud to be a soldier, proud to stand up for the United States of America. And those are all the things that that still dwell deep in my spirit to help me function on a day-to-day basis. And it's just the training. I mean, you talk about training all the time. But for young people that have not experienced that will not experience that, how do we, as a community, you know, I mean, right now with the things that's going out, they're tore down. A lot of them are tore down. And we talked about it from the womb.
Yeah.
They've been tore down from the womb. You know,
Just constantly beat
constantly
down.
beat up from a frustrated mom or a dad that continuously lied to you and tell you he gonna get you that bike. You know, I'll be there for Christmas. You know, we're about to
Yeah.
go into a Thanksgiving season. We're not sitting around some white picket fence family where everybody's gonna sit down with a turkey in the middle and everybody passing around the cranberry sauce and all
Yeah.
that type of stuff. You know, and so we're not in the families like that. And so from you not being able to see yourself on a road to success, how do we build these young people back up where they can stop being as hurt and start taking some individual accountability for their situations and start doing something about it?
I like to, because that's a big question. That's a big question.
It was loaded.
Yeah. When a young man gets to a certain age, or a young woman, then you have to start implementing a protocol of what we like to call a higher science, you know. And one of the highest ones that I like to give is good comes to good and bad comes to bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a training point, a training period, where these youth are no longer going to listen. Then they have to understand for themselves, you know, like myself was. There was a time where I made a decision where I know the consequences and repercussions, and I'm going to do this. I'm willing to take them head on, and this is what I'm going to do. So then, when you find yourself in the judicial system, when you find yourself in the corrections, then that's something that we like to say, that arrow already left the bow. So you don't want to redirect the arrow once it left. Now you got to redirect the shooter. So like you said, the programming, we have to, the responsible men like ourselves and those ones that are willing to do it, that are sincerely willing to take their time and say, this is the program and this is why it's a program, and save those that are able to be saved. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but if you recall the story of Moses, after a while, he got the children. Now, it wasn't children as in youth, but it was the people. Let's say, the children of Israel, he got them out of there. Once he got them out of there, it was some people that wanted to stay.
Oh, yeah. They complained. They
Then
murmured.
it was some people that wanted to go back. Then it was some in his absence that worshiped the calf. After a while, Moses said, you know what? I'm going to let this old thought, I'm going to let this old thinking die out in the wilderness. And then I'm going to take this youth. So in that programming and with that story, we have to find a time, an age that says, here it is. If you are having hell at home as a youth, you're at a point where you still can get over that. And if you are at a point where you're overgrown and you're still messing up, we may just have to leave you in the wilderness.
So you be part of the Don't Shoot program.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
And a victim to the program if you don't take heed.
Because there's a
and
mentality
take
that's going to carry
the
a
hand
gun.
that's going to be reached out to you.
You think
to
about
pick
that?
you up.
I love action movies. You're not Agent 47. You're not Jason Bourne or James Bond or nobody. You don't need to have no damn gun. So it's a certain mentality that's telling that person that they do need to have the gun because they're not fighting crime. It's so funny because my 8-year-old son, he not only said he wanted to be a ninja, but he said he wanted to be a ninja for the community.
Yeah, yeah.
And then later on, he mentioned that he wanted to be a police officer. And it tickled me to my heart because he said, a ninja for my community. So I thought, and you know how the babies is, they watching these cartoons and the superheroes. So obviously he's thinking he needs to help his community.
Right, right.
But eventually, what happens, that sour you swallow that sour drink or that sour candy. Ooh, I don't like that. When some attitude, not the officer. One officer doesn't represent all of them.
Right.
One officer leaves a bad taste in your mouth because you say, "This is what y'all about."
Right. Right.
You,
Right.
you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So then the program has to be with them too, because it got to go to that serve and protect. It has to go to I feel comfortable. I feel safe with you, not I done pulled up. Are you gonna run my plate?
Right.
Not, hey, you fit the description. Not those things, because what we're facing, Brother Sean, is what we've always faced with our neighborhood. Our youth coming up, and I can go all the way back to Walt, Rasul Moat, Jackie Vonner, CC. There are many.
Sud.
Who was that? The
Blunt.
DJ used to be over at the Leonard Center. Hot Mix.
Hot Mix Hayes.
You know what I'm saying? These are the brothers that was there for us. So somehow that mentor and that apprenticeship, the reins didn't get passed on, because now we don't have a person in place to really help us out. And I'm big, of course, I'm a martial artist, and I'm big on alternative physical fitness, because you don't find a lot of young black youth in the martial arts, in this area. So to get away from the basketball, the football, and I'm not knocking those things. I did those things with Walt, with Rasul, with Jackie Vonner, but the integrity, the honor, the self-esteem, the self-control didn't necessarily be implemented, because sadly spoken, you could play a little basketball and then go do some crime. You could, and back then in Waltown we had a football team. We ain't had a football team.
Right.
And here it is, some of the best
Athletes.
athletic children probably in the state don't even get a chance to shine. That's why brothers like Jamal Jones with the Park District. And that's a program in itself. Fixing up that park, making the water park, making the exercise park, putting benches next to the basketball court, making sure the nets are up. That is a quality of life and a program of changing that, hey, look how many years we couldn't run under a gazebo.
Right. When it rained, storm hit.
Yeah.
Just a brief storm. All we need is a gazebo, and we go back to having fun.
Yeah, a plug-in for a little radio, a barbecue, walk area for our seniors, and for our now single mothers that have to pull that have to push that old stroller.
One of the things that you mentioned about the transition of guys that went to the University of Illinois and they became mentors in the community and things of that nature. We mentioned earlier in the shop when we talked about the divisions of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That being District 1, so that's their problem.
That's right.
This being West Champaign, we don't want that in our neighborhood. We just had a shooting, a home invasion that happened over on the west side of town, and it alarmed that whole community, and you seen some for lease signs up and for sale signs getting ready to get put up because people ready to get up out their neighborhood. Yeah. They done been there too long, and the crime then started to catch up with them. And that's the mentality in the field. But when we talk about divisions throughout the community, whether if it's with the University of Illinois, it's with the neighborhood communities, even with ourselves, even on an economic level, or even if it came down to we don't have any organizations, so we already wiped that out. No organizations anymore, and it's unfortunate, but that blow has been placed in the laps of so-called community leaders, which this program, that Stop Don't Shoot program, are asking for community leaders and faith-based leaders.
Yeah.
So now that responsibility, that level is dropped back in the laps of those hands.
Yeah.
Well, we're so divided and so splintered at this point. How do you feel the role that they're going to play and how successful a role will they play with us being divided, or do our community even respect these so-called individuals and leaders to be able to lead that path? And I know we got a few minutes left on the program.
The biggest part on that, would have to be as a martial artist. I always prided myself on I'm a fighter that learned martial arts. I'm not a martial artist that learned how to fight. So you may be a pastor, bishop, minister, but that does not mean you actually know what your neighborhood goes through. You see what I'm saying? You may be a black man, but you are not living the life. My younger brother, he's just younger, but he's a grown man, was just the police task force that was running around this summer. He was actually placed down on the get down on the ground. We thought you was somebody else. So not knowing what's actually going on at the grassroots level. So that type of division, I think we need to be more selective on who we send to represent us. We talked about us jokingly running for alderman. Maybe one of us need to stop talking so darn much and start doing sacrifice. Like I said before, some of the brothers
working on policies
that listen to this, they know who they are. Sacrifice a little bit more of your time, because that's what it took for me. It took for me to, as I talked, I started to hear it, said, well, damn, why don't you do it? You know, and that division part, the division part is it's always going to be there, but we have to find a common cause, and that common cause is save not just our neighborhood and our people. We can't make an apology as to who we are. We have to stop doing that and come together as a people, regardless to our philosophies, religious thoughts, or whatever.
And you know, and the most important thing is to save our youth.
That's right.
We're losing too many of our youth. Our time is up on this segment of Let the Truth Be Told. I'm going to bring Brother Laurice back on this program. I thank the Lord for everybody that watch our program. Y'all be careful out there. Be safe in our community. And whatever you can do, you do it to the best of your ability to make our community a better place. I thank the Lord for you for watching another episode of Let the Truth Be Told. Peace.
Peace.